For some reason, I don't know if Bushiroad was just being slow, but they don't have the info on their website yet. So I'm going to give you that too, so you can see how I put the deck together. I'll make it really quick because everybody knows what the SAO cards do anyway.
Okay, so we've got an overhead camera on your mat if you want to show your prizes on that.
Okay.
And then do a quick like 5 to 10 minute.
Yeah. Do you have the one that's just all this one mat?
That's it. That's what's on the screen.
Okay. I can't see it. So.
No, these are 2 different sets. Okay. So you're good.
I'm not the tech guy. I just trust him. So, so all the top 8 teams got these pins. I guess I should hold it like that because that's what you're seeing on the screen right now. So I think they started doing these in 2016. They're pretty neat. I don't ever want to take them out of the cases once we get them, but it's cool that they hand out little trinkets like this just so you can remember the event. You can remember a good day that you had. Top 4, for top 4 they did the Persona 5 mats. I haven't unwrapped mine yet because I'm a savage. Many other people don't unwrap theirs either, fellow savages. I'm one of you for now. At some point I'll open it up, but yeah, it's kind of cool that they do is that the mats that they hand out for each event, they tend to it tends to vary each time. They did one with just Chiyoko that looked really cool and like on her throne. They did another for Konosuba. And for different games, they do different ones as well. Yeah, besides Vice Shorts. So, but this is another cool thing. TM. At some point, I'll actually open it up and play games on it. But I kind of have other mats that I like, so I'll stick with some of those for a while. Some people just don't ever unwrap these, and they play cards on them, and I guess that's a thing. But I don't know. That's something that I can't picture doing for too long. So last and certainly not least, they started doing trophies, or no, well not trophies, but these medals. They've done trophies at other events, like the high-level continental events, but or I think they did them at Worlds too. But so the first, second, and third place teams got these little medallions, and they even have specific text about the event on the back, which I thought was a cool touch. When they handed these out, I didn't expect to see this on the back, but I don't know if you can even see it on the camera, but it has text that says Vice Schwartz Team League, White Plains, New York, second place team. I assume the others for first and third also have that descriptor info on the back. So this is really cool. Like that. I know these are a little more than trinkets to people, but it's just, they're kind of cool things to remember the events and just remember times that you had really good events and really good days. This is something that I would encourage Bushiroad to keep doing because it's a nice touch. It adds something to the events. Beyond just saying, oh hey, I got second, kappa kappa kappa. So that said, let's go through a really quick deck tech. I did want to give this to you, and again, I promised James. So again, this was Yuki Link Strike. These were just the choices that I made based on my testing and what I observed in the weeks leading up to the event. This is the one that, again, I'm not going to pass this off as necessarily the top SAO deck out there because you have so many options and different players could feel comfortable with different ones, but this was what I found worked best in my samples. So really quick, I play a very high level 0 count. I think I have 19 level 0s, but I'll check that afterwards. So this goes without saying, for runners, you always want to open with a runner if you can to try to generate virtual pluses. It has text on it to hand a Xenon 1K, but it's hardly ever relevant. We have a couple Xenons in the deck, but neither one of them is last shot. This is something that I decided I needed to try doing in a Yuki deck, and it paid off. So this is Time to Get Serious Kirito, aka Clean Cut, because everybody calls it that. So really what you're trying to do with this, like the goal of putting this in the deck is to give yourself the ability to try field off of anybody who doesn't play a runner or doesn't open with a runner at level 0. One of the issues that you'll run into if you play a Yuki deck is difficulty generating stock over the course of the game so that you have enough for level 3. And having the ability to try field early in a profitable way, it doesn't punish your hand severely because you have the ability to, if you get the effect off, you get the ability to attack with more characters later on. But being able to open with a turn that nets you 3 stock, that feels really good in a Yuki deck. it gives you more flexibility to make use of your pluses later on without shortchanging yourself for level 3. And while I don't think I would necessarily play this in every SAO deck, I do think it has merit in the Yuki deck in particular. It's far less relevant after level 0, but sometimes you might have occasions here and there where the opponent has to feel the shitter of some kind in the mid game, and then he can get advantage off of that. But you're not necessarily looking for it, but sometimes it can come up. His main role is to be one of the best turn 2 plays in SAO. 3 bombs. I don't think the English meta is quite caught up to where Japanese is, where Japanese kind of doesn't care a whole lot about bombs anymore unless they have good secondary effects. But Silica has a good secondary effect. It's a costless filter, usually for climaxes to get them out of your hand. Again, you don't build oodles of stock in this deck, so you don't want to have to pay stock most of the time for your discard outlets, so this is a chance to do one for free. I teched a single copy of this. I just got through saying I don't want to pay stock most of the time for discard outlets. There are a couple things I can say about this. First, why the hell did I play this piece of garbage from set 2 instead of one of the others? Namely, in the new set in Ordinal Scale, we have a green Suguha with 500 more power than this and the ability to search net characters, but the demerit that your other characters can't side attack. But I went with this for a couple reasons. 1, I needed more red. 2, I didn't want to try to get more red off of Brainstorms. And 3, I needed red to play my endgame, and even my Elizabeth Early play, level 2. I tried for a while just having these, just the bombs, and I found that I didn't have enough red, so I added this as well. And not just for red, but also to be sort of a wild card. It's like a singleton of a wild card, so if there's a specific card that I don't find that I need, then she can turn something else in my hand into that one card. This isn't something that I emphasize. It's more, you could think of it more as just like a feather on an arrow that you use to stabilize the arrow. You don't put a whole bunch of those in your deck. It's there to help smooth things out on occasion when you need it to. Brainstorms, I picked a green one because I need green because I'm playing Yuki. There is a new Asuna in yellow that's 500 global on offense, but I just don't need that in this deck. I have enough burst, and the need for green takes priority over that. Sister fond of her brother Levi, aka Amagi. Let's just call it Amagi because that's the easy thing to do. This has been a great inclusion in the SAO deck. Again, as I said before, it takes a stress off of getting Yuki combos off. It allows you to justify moments where you're playing off a climax and you have only one Yuki to generate a plus with, because now you can get your if you're going for 2 pluses off of, say, 2 Yukis, which is a pretty typical SAO level 1 game, now you have the option, instead of going 1 Amagi and 1 Yuki combo, and you still get your +2, excluding effects of the climax itself. Depends on how you want to measure the climax and whether it's a minus point. I'm not going to get into that debate. There's a debate about that. I'm not going there. All I care about is that I'm getting 2 characters. I'm netting 2 more characters during the turn. She does have the ability when you use an act, which would be the Brainstorm, or if you play a counter, a backup effect. Those are 2 ways to generate the 1K. It doesn't feel too relevant in the Yuki deck because the Yuki deck is small on defense, but occasionally it could trip up an opponent who doesn't pay attention to it. She's really, the main reason she's there is because we're playing a deck that has 8 climaxes that put climaxes in your hand, and she's a chance to generate much more advantage over the course of the game. So that's level 0. Again, that is 19 level 0s if my eyeballs don't deceive me. It feels like an entirely justifiable count for SAO because SAO has a good toolbox at level 0. Level 1, we're playing Yukis because Yuki. I'm not even going to talk about this. Everybody knows what it does. Sometimes she trips up bombs. If you get to trip up a bomb, more power to you, but her main reason to be here is the plus. 3 copies of the Rise Kirito. Getting a costless burst power is good, getting a discard outlet is good in a deck that puts 8 climaxes in hand. So it's an effect that you value even if you have to wait for it, and even if you have to wait for it to go off on the backswing, it's still useful. I think it's more useful, to be specific, I think it's more useful when you're at an early count in your clock, such as 1-0, 1-1, or something like that. If you're already deep into level 1, you should not expect this to... You might not be able to expect this, depending on what's left in your deck, you might not be able to expect it anymore to improve your refresh. You might miss the timing where you're about to refresh your deck and you want to steer a climax from hand into waiting room before you run out, off of his effect. You might not get that. You're not always going to get it, but sometimes you will. 2 copies of Choice to Fight Kirito. Where again, we're going all out burst power here. This is burst. This is burst. This is burst. We have kind of a throwaway culture with our cards in the stack at level 1. We don't care whether they survive on the backswing. We're not actually trying to play around stuff like Aaron. We just want to make sure that we get reverses on our turn to cost the opponent advantage of some kind. And again, that'll work as... you're not gonna, with this plan, you're not gonna deny AOT advantage, and that to some could be enough of a demerit to not try to play this kind of deck plan in the English meta. I decided, in my experience, even though Aaron would still get combos off, that wasn't enough to cost me games against it more often than not. I was still able to compete, and I was still able to go toe-to-toe with him. Just in a different way compared to something like Standby, where I'm just trying to deny advantage outright. 2 copies of the 1-0 backup, the splittable backup. I think this might be the only card from the first set that I'm running in SAO, and that might be the case for many other players as well. This has aged exceptionally well. It's still one of the best costless counters out there for the English metagame. I don't play more than 2 because, again, I don't really value too much. I don't value the backswing very much. I'm not always that concerned about what my opponent's trying to do. I'm just more concerned about what I do on offense in this deck. So that is the total of 11 level 1s. So we're up to 30 cards in the deck so far. Level 2 is very sparse. 1 of this and 1 of this. This is a Kirito bottom decker. I think that if you're building an SAO deck, you have to have at least 1 copy of this. We are in a game now that has double early play Love Life Sunshine. Konosuba is still out there. I ran into it in top 8. We're getting other sets that emphasize early plays soon, such as Ray Zero. You need this in your deck. I think that not including this is just... Unless for some reason you're building a deck that doesn't have blue, and I don't know why you would do that, but... if you're playing blue and you don't have this, I think that's just an error in deck building. The bottom deck effect is valuable. It is a permanent answer to things during the mid to late game that your opponent is counting on surviving or otherwise being able to save or recur. I do play a copy of this. Some players might actually just play 2 copies of Kirito instead, and I wouldn't blame them for doing that, but I splashed... I gave myself more options with what amount to anti-early play cards. The Xenon is better at burst power. She's better burst power at level 3, when the opponent's level 3 and his effect can't go off anymore, but... more often than not, if I'm going to kill an early play, I want to do it with this. By level 3, you're not even really looking at them as early plays anymore. They're just stuff on the board that you need to answer at that point. But the main reason she's here is so that I can change a bar that I trigger into my blue gate for my Link Strike combo. Sometimes... this is actually something that came up a lot back when I was playing Yuki and Xenon, the last shot combo. One annoying problem that deck always had was trying to get the book into your hand at level 3. Sometimes you would just, even if you weren't having hand problems, you'd still be clocking turn after turn, just trying to draw the damn book and get it into your hand. And I wanted to play this as kind of an insular effect against that in the Link combo where I have gates. With her in the deck, that means that I have the option when I get a bar into my hand, I can just change it out for the gate, and I don't have to worry about, from that point, I don't have to worry about clocking more to try to get it in hand. I look at her as more of a way to prevent me from having to clock to find the gate. She's a way to get it in my hand otherwise. So those are the only level 2s. So we're up to 32 cards. So the last 10 characters, of course, will be level 3s. So we have, for a Yuki deck, this might be a surprising number of quote-unquote early plays. I went with Elizabeth. She gets -1 level in hand if you have 2 or fewer climaxes in waiting room. 500 power for each other avatar net, so she can be 11k if you have a full board before any assists. Like the reason I think she's the best fit in the Yuki deck is because Yuki decks tend to have a lot of hand lying around, but not a whole lot of stock. So she effectively lets you pay 1 and discard 1 to heal instead of paying 2 to heal, and that feels like kind of the sweet spot for a Yuki deck going for an early play heal. And it's also the biggest. It's also one of the biggest available early play plans for the deck. So where we have kind of a throwaway culture at level 1, and our other level 2 plays are really just anti-early play killers. This is something that you're actually kind of hoping might survive for multiple turns when you play it, and you're well positioned to try to keep her on the board. If she's 11k and you have the Amagi out on the board, so you have this in the back, and you have a counter in hand. You could push her potentially up to a number like 14k in the backswing. That feels good. That at that power threshold, your character is usually going to survive. It tends to survive for the same reason stuff like Darkness and Konosuba would survive. The opponent's probably not going to get over that kind of defense without having actual removal of their own, like the Kirito. So I think this is well situated. If you're playing Yuki, I think this is your healer of choice, unless for some reason you're not playing red. Now, this is something I put in kind of last minute. My early tests didn't involve Link Strike Xenon, but I decided to put it in at the end. That said, I might consider cutting one of these for one of the other Link Strike characters, probably a 4th copy of Elizabeth if I were to do that. But I put her in because I was concerned about situations where the Elizabeth and Link Strike wouldn't necessarily give me enough reach to finish off an opponent, because Burn 1 is good when your opponent is already level 3. It's not so good when you're behind on damage and trying to keep up. And I thought that the Xenon might have a chance in a Yuki deck to maybe convert, if you need to, some of your own compression that you generate with Yuki into more reliable restands. In practice, it wasn't as relevant as I thought. I think I played Link Strike Xenon as an early play only once during the entire day, and it even whiffed on that one try. But on the other hand, I had a whole pile of climaxes that I somehow missed, and I canceled everything the next turn. But anyway, she's really here less to be an early play. The only early play I really care about most of the time is the Elizabeth. She's really here more to be another Link Strike target at level 3 to swap a Kirito out for. I think she's more valuable in that role. I really think it's a mistake to try to just play her as sort of like an Eris from Konosuba. Eris is Eris. Xenon is not Eris. Xenon has a different role in the deck, and she doesn't work in practice. She doesn't work out quite the same way as an Eris. Not only just because of the mechanics of the deck, but because of her own mechanics. She doesn't get to top check the same character as an Eris. She's milling 3 and trying to hit a climax each time. And if you have a compressed deck, you might not necessarily want to mill through all of it to try, or a bunch of it to try to get multiple restands off. I think this is just good to give yourself more reach if you're in an endgame situation where Burn 1 isn't as valuable as another swing for 3+ would be. So that's kind of my outlook there. The other level 3, the cards that are actually meant to be level 3 plays, Link Strike Kirito and the Link Strike Elizabeth. So we have essentially, if you want to look at it this way, we have 3 Kiritos and then 5 targets for the Kirito to change out for. So he's good at digging for the gate if you don't have it in your hand yet. The cost to switch him out is pay 3, discard 2 cards from hand, and also send him to waiting room. That sounds really expensive, but a couple things to keep in mind are he's giving you another card in hand when you play him, so that kind of takes the curse off of paying 2 cards out of hand somewhat. And you're also generating more attacks afterwards. So, and the attacker you're swapping out for, she doesn't cost any more stock to do her additional effect. So, you more often than not, you can actually pay for this. It sounds really expensive, but in practice, you actually get to pay for it. I usually only get to play one, but the way the math works out, if you have 7 stock going into your turn, you could play 2 copies of him and something else that doesn't cost any stock, and then you could get 2 swaps out. But I felt like more often than not in a deck that had Link Strike Elizabeth, I usually only needed to get 1 out, and then like my end game that I would hold for most of the time would look something like this. I'd have a Kirito, I'd have 2 Elizabeths. He'll attack, these other 2 will attack and burn 1. He swaps out for another Elizabeth, and she does another burn 1 and another swing. Like, I want to do burn 1s as much as I can. I felt like exploring the option of burning by discarding cards was good in a Yuki deck that builds a lot of cards in hand but doesn't build a lot of stock. So I wanted to explore this play, and I really felt like it paid off, and I saw it pay off during the top matches. You won't always get this many. I don't think you have to get 3. I think if you get 1 Kirito off and you get 2 Elizabeth Burns, I think you're already at a place where you're generating a much more threatening endgame than many other SAO decks with different builds do. And again, just to be specific, because I didn't talk closely about Elizabeth yet, her effect is when she comes into play from hand or by the Link Strike swap from Kirito, you salvage a character. An avatar or net character. So she's also giving you more cards in hand, which helps to take some of the curse off of her cost, which is when she attacks paying 2 or paying 2 cards out of hand, discarding 2 to burn for 1. So overall, I felt like this was the most rewarding endgame for me to play. I feel like we're in a place where SAO players really need to consider an endgame future where they're not desperately trying to burn 4 with Xenon or swing for 3 a bunch of times with Switch and hope that some of them go in. I think that it's worth exploring an endgame option where you can burn 1, you can chip in damage instead of going for home run swings during the endgame. Many times you're going to find many opponents. You'll find them at places like 3-1, 3-2, 3-3, and swings for... You're valuing there at that point, swinging for 3 versus generating burns for 1. And burns for 1, once you're in that late stage of the game where your opponent is close to being finished off, burn 1 feels really good to have. It felt good. It felt better to me in those situations than the other endgame plans. I think that, again, if I were to build this deck again, I think I might cut one of the Link Strike Xenons and actually just have a 4th Lisbeth. And that would make it easier to tri-field Lisbeth during the endgame if you need to. But even if you don't have a Climax combo, you have the benefit here of a multi-dimensional endgame. If you don't have the Kirito combo proper, even just tri-fielding Lisbeth and burning for 1 and swinging for 2, or maybe 3 if you have the wrong Climax. Even that is a really good endgame to have when you're trying to finish off opponents, especially well-compressed opponents. And if you need to, if you're in a situation where you need to try to reach bigger than a burn 1, you have the Xenon option as well. And again, I think this is a better target. I think this is a more valuable as a target for Kirito instead of just trying to early play, even though it has an early play option. So that's that. So again, level 3 is 10 cards, so that makes up our 42. The climaxes should be super obvious by now. You have 4 of the bars. I'm a savage, so I only have standard art because all of my foils warped, and that felt bad, and they all stood out in decks, and that would have been cheating. And 4 of the blue gates. So this one's called Black Swordsman once more. We have a bunch of different gate cards now, so if you're not familiar with the set, it's the one that looks like this. Choose this one. Many players are averse to the idea of playing 8 climaxes that all put climaxes in your hand, and I do get that concern, but I feel like if any deck is equipped to deal with that, it's a deck that plays Yukis that can take climaxes out of your hand and turn them into more characters during offense, not only keeping the stock clean, but keeping your hand clean as well. Like if anybody can do it, it's Yuki, and having the ability to constantly play climaxes during the mid game and constantly swing for 2, that helps to make up for the fact that you don't have a field centric strategy and you're not opening up lanes on the opponent's turn that you can then direct swing into in the next turn. So it's a different way of winning games. And I think that at least this aspect of it, that at least the Yuki aspect of it, I think people have seen in English for a long time. It's the interaction with gates that I think is a little less familiar. So that's the deck. I hope that was useful to somebody and I didn't just stammer over everything that I wanted to talk about there. So